Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Suzi Barrett, and my guest today is the Empress of Musical Improv, Tara Copeland. Tara started out at Chicago City Limits and UCB New York, where she was on the legendary team Mother, and she is a permanent fixture on the musical improv scene in LA, where she now teaches musical improv at UCB and on her own. Not surprisingly, this episode has a ton of musical improv wisdom and advice, which we touch on a little bit here in part 1, but the real meat is in part 2. That's where we deep dive about musical improv structure and tactics and helpful at-home exercises, a bunch of demystifications, things that make it feel really accessible and doable to anyone. And you can access part 2 by becoming a subscriber at yesalso.supercast.com. If you're in LA and would like to study with Tara, she teaches musical improv drop-in classes at the Clubhouse. And to get more info on that, just email her at taraimprovclasses@gmail.com. And you can see her perform with Sweet Sweet Fantasy Musical on November 26th at UCB, and they'll also have a show in December. That's a team made up of the musical improv teachers and coaches from UCB. Go check them out. As always, after the episode, head over to our Instagram at YesAlsoPod to check out pictures from throughout Tara's improv career. But for now, here's Tara Copeland. Tara Copeland.
Hi, Suzi.
My goodness.
Hi.
It's such a delight. As you were coming in, I was saying I haven't seen you or hung out with you in a while, and this is great. It's been a while.
It's really nice to see you too.
Let's talk prov.
Yeah.
You are like the definitive musical improv guru in LA.
I think that's very nice.
And maybe out of everywhere, truly.
That's very nice. I jokingly say that I would like to be the RuPaul of musical improv.
I think it's possible, and I think you're like 90% there.
That's very nice. I mean, there's a lot of people who are very good at musical improv, and I just think I'm the person who, like at a certain point, I was like, I want to teach other people how to do this, and so I think that is sort of where that's where the bubble becomes, and I'm not even obviously the only one who does that or knows how to do that.
But you sort of, at some point, you carved out a lane of not only being a musical improv performer, but reaching back and teaching and coaching and fostering this like scene.
It started in New York, actually, even before I moved out to LA.
Talk to me.
So, well, like really to go back, like when I first was doing improv, do we?
Yeah, let's go all the way back.
Years? Do we want to age ourselves?
Yeah, we do.
So I was in college, and I lived in New York for the two summers in college. I was in college in Pennsylvania. This is literally where I started doing improv, was in college.
Great.
I was a freshman in college, and I saw the sketch, and I was at Bryn Mawr, and Bryn Mawr shares a course catalog with Haverford College. So there's kind of like, it's two colleges, but I always say it's like one college with two campuses, kind of, because you can take classes either place, and there's a bus that runs back and forth. So it was a by college sketch and improv troupe. I saw their first show my freshman year, and I don't know, I literally was like, oh, if you wrote it in a movie, it would be like spotlight on me. Yep. Everything else fades. Angels sing.
Daffodils spring up from the ground.
It was a literal that, where I was like, that's me. And I didn't know it was me. You know, I knew I liked improv from watching Whose Line Is It Anyway? I had done it once in high school because a girl got sick at a competition. We placed third in the state. So I knew
at an
that
improv competition?
It was like a forensics, like like theater, the statewide speech, debate, theater, and there was an improv category, and a girl at my high school was doing it and got sick, and they were like, will you do it? And I said, sure.
And you weren't previously on that team or anything? They just plucked you from the masses?
They were like, come do a scene. And, it was like, your suggestion is bananas. And we did whatever, I like barely even remember it. It was kind of that wasn't the moment where I thought I'm supposed to be doing improv.
But
right?
I will say it's the moment where your destiny knocked on your door and you just didn't recognize it. Right.
It's a big moment. But I will say I was always funny. I was always the funny friend, the funny girl. A guy in high school said, Jerry Jewell said to me, sex with you would be hilarious. And no one had ever even mentioned me and sex in the same sentence. And I literally froze because I was like, sex with me?
You're like, oh my God, thank
sex.
you.
And someone was like, that's not nice. And he said, no, she'd be like cracking jokes the whole time. It would be so fun.
Yeah.
And I like to like, there's a parallel world where I'm still having sex with him today. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like,
he's like, this joke has gone on for so long.
But it was that was, you know, I was like, that's kind of was always the funny girl. I was funny and fun to be around. And so it wasn't until my freshman year I saw this show and I was like, that's me. And it never occurred to me it wasn't me. And it's never has since then. 19 years old, like.
Good,
yeah.
Thank God. And you promised me a year. That you don't have to say it.
Oh, so that summer, 1997,
okay,
I applied for 2 internships. One was in Los Angeles for the soap opera Sunset Beach, which was my favorite soap opera. No, you barely have heard of it.
Yeah, no.
And I applied for an internship at Chicago City Limits, which was an off-Broadway improv theater in New York City. And that was going to determine like the first time that I didn't go back home for the summer. I grew up in Arkansas, so I was like, I'm not going back this summer.
And this was summer of 97?
97.
That is the summer that I spent in New York during my college.
Did you go to Solo Arts and watch UCB?
Nope.
Okay.
I did the Meisner summer program at Neighborhood Playhouse.
So you and I were in, so that summer I went on, obviously there wasn't Google or whatever, but there was like, I looked for every improv you could find in New York City. And I went and I interviewed for this internship at Chicago City Limits. And there was like a blurb in Time Out that was like, Sunday nights, Solo Arts, ASCAT. Come and see this improv from Chicago. So every Sunday, I mean, they didn't even have a theater then. They didn't teach. It wasn't really classes. I mean, maybe they were teaching, but it wasn't like I was only there for 8 weeks or 6 weeks or something. But at the end of that summer, so Faye had just moved to New York to write for SNL that summer.
Yes.
And she taught on a Sunday. I have such a bad memory for some things, but it was a Sunday because the night before, I believe, I was going to see Garth Brooks' Central Park concert.
All right.
I loved Garth Brooks. And the next day I was meant to fly. My sublet was over and I was meant to fly home to Arkansas for the last couple of weeks of the summer before school started. I pushed my flight so that I could take this workshop that Tina was teaching. It was Women in Improv.
Unbelievable.
3-hour workshop at Solo Arts. All of my luggage was stowed in like a closet or it was in the lobby, basically, whatever that was. And it was like, she taught the workshop. Amy was there. Katie Roberts was there. Julie Brister.
The Amy was like in the workshop as
they
like
were friends, but
right.
yeah, it was like the women who were around. I probably Betsy was probably there. I don't know.
Betsy
I'd have to
Stover.
ask her, but I think so. I believe
Right.
Julie and I have talked about that we were both there, and so
probably Joan Rivers.
Maybe
maybe
Rivers.
Lucille Ball. I guess the ghost of Gilda.
It's hard to know because
Yeah.
we didn't really know each other because I was there all the time for the Sunday show, but there wasn't for me. There wasn't a class structure there that summer, but I was at Chicago City Limits.
Pause. Do you remember any takeaways from that workshop? Did she say anything that tilted your head or that you that rings as a quote or anything?
No. I wish I did. And I didn't. She was like not even Tina Fey yet.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So
was this still like short-haired Tina?
Yes.
Yeah.
No makeup, short hair.
Yeah, she looked like a lesbian bus driver.
Am I allowed to say that? Are you allowed to
I'm
talk
allowed
about her that way? Yeah.
I can say it.
No, she changed, very dramatic appearance change, but yes, she was, but it was, I remember it being the best part of my whole summer was that 3 hours, it was just I already knew that's what I wanted. I mean, I've been interning at Chicago City Limits the whole summer, taking classes, and I was just like, so that was the beginning of really all of it for me. But at Chicago City Limits, I don't know if you know anything about CCL.
I do, yeah.
Everyone says this is this short form show, right? But like we would do a 2-hour show. The act 1 would end with a 30 to 40 minute musical.
Oh God.
So it was funny because I remember for some people it was like, oh, that's that short form show, but it was like truly had short form in it, and that we did musical games and we did certain games that, New Choice, Ding, and stuff. Like we did do short form games, but it had a really crazy long form element to it.
Yeah, because I'm just running the math on that. Ending Act 1 with a 40-minute
30
piece.
to 40-minute musical.
So that means there's like, what, 3 games before that? There's like 15 minutes.
We start with the
40
blues. Every show starts with an improvised blues. And there were some parody sketches and songs throughout. And so, the show ran, what, an hour and a half to 2 hours. I mean, it was technically an off-Broadway theater.
Yeah.
So they're charging $60 a ticket.
Hell yeah.
It was small, but it was full a lot of the time. And so that was like, I had this split personality in the beginning where I was like, when I graduated, I moved to New York and started classes in 1999, right? And so I was like UCB classes, long form, and I was doing Chicago City Limits, taking classes and wanting desperately to be on the main stage. Because like at the main stage when I was there, it was like John Cameron Telfer, who is to this day just like a total hero of mine, Andy Daly. I have a really good Andy Daly story.
Hit it. Hit the gas.
So I think it's good. We would, this theater was on 61st and 1st. And I lived, that first summer, I lived in Union Square, which was 13th and like 6th-ish. But I lived near Union Square. And he lived in, I don't know, Queens or something. So I don't know if you know New York, but like we would take the train down on the east side. And at Union Square, he would transfer to the L, which went across to Queens. Well, my nearest train stop was the L at like 14th and 3rd. I don't know, whatever the fuck the street was. Whatever the street was. I did not know for weeks and weeks and weeks that I was as close to Union Square as I was to this stop on the L. And I would wait with him, get on the L with him, ride what I found out later was A block. And then I'd get off and walk home. And he never told me. He never was like, do you know
can walk the one block.
And like years later, I was like, what was happening there? And he was like, I just liked the company because we were like hanging out, right?
Yeah,
and he is just a genius.
Truly one of my improv heroes.
I mean,
I've
an
never
absolute genius.
seen him do anything that didn't make my head spin. I mean that. Like his characters, his voice is so good. Like his speaking voice, he slips into. Yeah,
when you're like 20 and he's the cutest thing, and you're like, I'll, and once I found out, did I stop waiting for the L with him? No, of course not. What am I, crazy?
In fact,
10 extra minutes with Andy Daly?
Right. In fact, you stayed on and rode all the way to Queens and then walked back from Queens.
And then I was like, I'll walk over the bridge. But so in the early days, I was doing musical improv a lot at Chicago City Limits because I was, so basically my path there was that I was in the touring company for a long time. But my dream was the main stage because they're doing 6 shows a week and they're getting paid. So by the time, and then at UCB, I was, after back in the day, you finished level 3 and they just put you on a team or didn't. Like there were not enough people to have auditions and all of that. So out of my 3rd class, I got put on Mother, and I think that is when Ptolemy maybe got put on Neutrino, because I feel like Neutrino might have existed, and one 8-person team was formed from my class. Can I remember what they're called? Not right now. And then like other people were like encouraged to take more classes. So that was like, I was sort of put on a pre-existing team. So Mother had already been formed at that point, but there was an opening because I think Stefan went off to, I think we used to joke, he's solving the human genome. He was a scientist. And so I think I took his spot. And so it was like I was doing both of those things. I was like doing Torco at CCL and I was on Mother at UCB.
Talk to me about so that experience of interning at CCL for a summer.
I interned 2 summers.
Okay, 2 summers.
So I had 2 summers before I graduated. And so I lived there and did that for 2 summers.
Dreaming of being on the main stage there, taking their classes and stuff. Then when you arrived back, then were you put on the main stage right away?
No, not at all. I auditioned and got into the touring company. I was in the touring company with a bunch of people that I don't know how many people who sit here who talk about CCL, but
lot, yeah.
It's like me, Paul Scheer, Eugene Cordero, Joe O'Brien, Michael Leffingwell, Eliza Skinner. I'm like Kimmy Gatewood. I'm like, I don't want to leave anyone out. But there was a huge group of people. And then there were some main stage people. And so like Andy Daly was main stage. Conroy, I think by then was main stage. John O'Donnell I think he kind of did both. But, that show was very musical. Like even aside from the fact that we did an actual musical, we did a bunch of musical games. So very, very like Whose Line, like a bunch of musical games. And we did a lot of musical parodies where we took songs and we sang about the topics of the day.
Gotcha. Pre-written. So this would be in the sketch category.
Correct. We didn't really do a lot of sketches. We had more like blackout sketches and musical parodies. It wasn't like full-fledged sketches.
Honestly, those two things are always the best part of a sketch show anyway. So cut your losses, And
the touring company was the same thing. We did some of the parody stuff, but we went all across the country. And so that was kind of like my big thing for a long time was the Torco, a bunch of us.
What were big lessons that you learned while touring, or like things that,
Lots of, really that musicals they just hit. They tour really, really well, the musical element. There would be some places where, because some of our parody stuff was political, it was topical. And so there would be some places, like there was one place, I can't remember, Virginia or somewhere, where they asked us not to come back at intermission.
Oh, wow.
Because they didn't like the political stuff.
Oh, wow.
They were like, this isn't what we thought it was going to be.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Did that sting, or were you like, good riddance? We're going to go to.
Yeah, it was not an audience that was enjoying us. And so I think they had us come back, do one thing because we were on intermission. I will say, like, we would do shows. So we did like these shows at this yeshiva school, and the women in the shows weren't allowed. We had to like wear skirts, and we weren't allowed to touch the men. And, I did one or two of those before I sort of sat down with the people in charge and said, you just shouldn't put women on these shows. It's so hard. We're so in our heads.
Yeah.
But we went improv tours. People love it. Improv is it's very entertaining. People will pay good money to see good improv. And it was truly, it's like so, it's like so hard to look back on your youth and go like, oh, you were young or whatever, but it was a dream. The whole thing was a dream.
Totally. Yeah, and to get paid to do the thing that you have admired for years, and now you're part of it and doing it.
And I'm getting paid to do it, and I'm doing it with people who I love more than anything in the world.
Yeah.
I will say improv touring, not like rock and roll touring. No one fucked me for a long time.
But if they had, it would have been hilarious.
Well, they would have loved it.
Yeah.
Just for any of you guys who are listening, who used to be on those tours with me, you missed out.
You missed out. And I'll tell you what, you really missed out, because Mick Jagger, not hilarious in bed. No, very serious.
Just ask Rod Stewart's semen.
Just ask it. Ask that semen. Do you have any disaster stories from the road? I love bad corporate show stories.
There's like some funny stories. Like I think it was Paul Scheer once he went to the bathroom with a hot mic once, like you could hear him peeing from the stage. We used to play this game called Boo Yay, and it's kind of like hot cold, but basically someone leaves the room, and it wasn't a game on stage, it was just for fun.
Drew DeFonso Marks brought this to boot camp as a warm-up that we did for years. It's great.
One of the most fun things. I've done it with groups of women moms at a retreat, and just
explain it to the listeners, because it's great.
Suzi leaves the room, and listeners, you and I come up with a series of tasks that Suzi must accomplish upon coming back in the room. And she comes back in neutral, and just saying boo and yay, we get her to do those things.
Right.
And so it could be as simple as walk in, sit down, take a sip of the water, right? And it's hot and cold, right? Except that there's this element of being like, boo, 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 boo.
So
yay,
like,
yay, yay, yay. So all you can say is boo and yay.
Yeah.
And we were like so in tune. We could get so granular and specific on the things we wanted people to say and do.
That's how we played it, was just one task, but it was like a complicated thing.
Yeah.
So it was like, go in the bathtub and tear out pages from the phone book, or like
but
things
you
like
have
that.
to tear out page 67, and then you have to underline this. But it would get that, like, as we played more and more, it would get more and more like ridiculous, and it was the most fun.
And what's fun about playing with good friends or who are improvisers is like they just start taking big swings.
Yeah.
So like you enter a room and right away you're putting your hand in the mayonnaise jar. It's like, is it this?
I think it was Lovingwell that we got him to say the word falafel at one point with like a lampshade on his head. And it was the most thrilling falafel. It was, how did we do it? I don't know. Even today, I'm like, it just did.
That is a high degree of difficulty. If this was an Olympic sport, like,
you'd have a good score.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's a 9.9. That's like a triple gainer pike. Like, that's something.
It's a Lutz. There's a Lutz.
There's a Lutz. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were just like having the absolute time of our lives.
Totally.
For like, I can't even tell you right now how many years I did it. I can tell you by the time I left, I was on the main stage. Didn't stay. So that was really, it ended up being really hard for me personally, because the main stage so by then Mother had a weekend slot. So in order to do the main stage, I had to not do every Mother show. And so I had I would skip main stage sometimes to do Mother shows because I didn't really want to choose between them. And then the real truth is, like, there was it wasn't what I wanted it to be by then. It was not the
management wise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I won't talk a ton about people out of school, but it was not, it was, this buzzy word that we love, toxic. It was toxic and hard. And it was a situation where, I was the only girl, and I don't know. It wasn't the dream. It turns out the real dream was the Torco in those years. And so by the time I did end up quitting that show, and then I could be on Mother full time, but I had to choose every weekend and week out between the two, and that was tough. Really hard.
Yeah. Well, and in a way, it's like a blessing that the one made the choice easier for you.
That is absolutely
being
right.
Like, okay, here's a place I love being, and here's a place I don't like being anymore. Yeah.
And I'm sure I hung on for longer than because I was getting paid enough to live on doing improv, and so it felt like an accomplishment and a dream. But it was sort of like, it just wasn't what I in my brain it was going to be. So.
Yeah. How do you come to the place in yourself where you, like, what's the process of knowing, okay, this isn't aligned with me in a way that overshadows even the money I'm making and the love of this job? Where does that equation tip into? Like, how did you know that about yourself?
This is my lifelong, like, this is like therapy. This is my lifelong thing, is figuring out how to remove myself from things that I might love and believe in them, but they're not working. And this has been a big year of that kind of change for me. So it's Congrats. Like, that's a really good question for me. I think it's hard to so it was 2004, so that's how long ago it's been. So it's a little hard to, like, I just know that probably part of what helped is that I had been in the Torco was so wonderful and so fun, and this was just not that. I mean, and there was just listen, the truth is, like, this was a company owned by someone, and that person, we were getting paid to do it, but that person was getting paid, right, and paying us. And so it's one of those things where, like, in a different world, we would have, like, unionized or something. You know what I mean? There was probably maybe a solution, but also in the world we lived in, as you know, in improv, there's always someone willing to take your place who wants it as much as you wanted it. And so sometimes you get into a situation where you're like, this should be different or should be better for us. But like, we've been not paid to do improv for more than half decades. Of our lives.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, for so long, that whole conversation around getting paid to do improv that would come up again and again, I would just be like, well, it's a great conversation, and there's 100 people who will take my spot if I stand my ground about that being important, right? And so I think that it was sort of that, like, it got to a point where the people weren't enough. The experience wasn't fun. And then I realized what I think if I didn't have Mother, I probably would have stayed longer. But the sort of realization, like, this lane over here is so good and so fulfilling. And so I had that it wasn't paying me, but at that point I was teaching. And that was always, especially back then, and maybe even now, but like the reward for putting in the work and not getting paid is that you became a teacher or a coach. And that's where some of that came back to you.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the other reward is doing a performance for sold out audiences that you didn't have to do your own promo for.
And we were a weekend team at that point and had been for a while. And we were selling out Saturday. And we had it was like Saturday night slots. We were selling them out. And
a stacked cast full of really great improvisers and actors that you're
people
like...
I loved, who I really like. We just loved each other so much.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's kind of reverse and go on that branch of the UCB
so that's
side.
the end of that. But that chapter is really where musical started for me.
Yeah.
You know, but then we brought musical stuff to UCB and to Magnet too.
Who's we?
Eliza Skinner was she's an absolute genius.
Yeah.
An absolute, it's like, it's crazy to me to have anyone say you're the reason people do this, because I feel like Eliza was such a big like part of that for me as we were learning. John O'Donnell, who's in New York, he was one of the people. They were two of the people at the time that we were going, let's put long form musical improv up at UCB and let's put it up at the Magnet. Like, let's find places to perform a 45-minute musical that is not attached to a longer show. And so, those shows were like Diamond Lion and Made Up Musical. Those were the shows early on. And she was doing I Eat Pandas. And so I Eat Pandas and Friends. And so it's just a lot of like that becoming a thing. And a lot of us, that was also like, it's a lot of the same people, right? Because we were all obsessed with improv. So it's like Leffingwell, Paul Scheer, me, Jamie Denbo, like a lot of the same people from Chicago City Limits were doing UCB right alongside of each other. And so those of us that were doing that were like, let's do some musical stuff over here on this side.
Yeah. And did you, I only know Diamond Lion from after it came here, and I did it a few times, but that existed as a show in New York.
It was Eliza's cast in New York, and then she brought it out here. She came out here before I did. And so when I moved out, she was like, do you want to come and join? Because I had played in New York with her. But yeah, so that show became sort of for a while, the benchmark musical show at UCB. And then once that show sort of disbanded, that's when Magic to Do, Jeff Hiller and I put Magic to Do together. So yeah, I mean, it's all so tied together.
Yeah.
All the people are the same people who are doing both. It was like there weren't a lot of places to do improv in New York. I mean, there wasn't really, sometimes there was a second city sometimes, but it really was UCB and Chicago City Limits were the two main places for a long time.
Right. Until like Pitt and Magnet and like these other places came on the scene.
Until the divorce. That was
double
hard.
Divorce. Yeah.
That was all really hard.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what was hard about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there was a lot of, I don't know how many people feel this way, but it felt like a divorce. It felt pretty traumatic.
And name what you're talking about for the listeners.
So what happened is originally, Ali and Armando were teaching at, I'm going to tell you what I think, and this is also 20 years later. So at the time it felt like a lot, but like maybe in retrospect, but something happened where they wanted something different from what was happening at UCB. And so they broke off and started their own theater called The Pit, People's Improv Theater. And it was like a divorce. It really was, because they were our teachers and they were putting us on teams, and so it was one family that became two families, and there was a real feeling of do you have to choose between your mom and your dad? Because it was not, in my memory, it was not an amicable situation. It was
between them and UCB.
Yeah. That's my memory, but also like I wasn't involved in it that directly, except that, it was like, it felt like it could be this cool thing to have another place to be performing, but it also sort of felt a little like don't go over there. There was a lot of us not being sure at the time.
Yeah. In your memory, were there people who chose, like quote unquote chose, who were like, I'm going with the pit and I'm not doing any more UCB shows in protest and solidarity?
I don't think anything happened in protest and solidarity, but I do think like there were people who were friends with or there might be like a Herald teams who had been retired who now had a new place that they could perform or who didn't have a weekend show. UCB was getting bigger, and so it was harder to get shows at UCB. So I do think that for some people it was an opportunity that they might not have been getting otherwise, but I don't remember. It's funny because it wasn't dramatic, but it was really dramatic. It was hard. I remember it being like sad and hard and like confusing.
Right.
But I didn't, and then eventually it got a little bit better. Like it wasn't like if you do a show at the pit, you're off your Herald team. It was not like that. But I just remember in the beginning of it feeling like, and then I guess then Ali and Armando split and Armando started the Magnet.
They had their own divorce.
Yeah. They did not work together as well as they thought or whatever. And so then that's when the Magnet formed. And I think by then it was a lot less prickly across the board. And that's my memory of it. But
yeah.
I have a real ability to not remember how bad things are.
That's a human trait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like, and I don't know actually, because I'm not good at gossip. You could tell me, by the way, gossip now and in a year from now, and I'll be like, oh, and you'll be like, I told you that a year ago, and I'm like, oh, you did? Maybe I did know that. I love a story that makes you gasp, but I don't necessarily remember all the time. Yeah. They're dating? Yeah, they've been together for 10 years. And I'm like, oh, right. No, I knew they were together.
You should do a show called Goldfish Gossip, where it's just the same like piece of news. You only need 6 guests ever, and you just put them on a loop. Yeah.
So it's hard to 100%, and I was not super actively involved, except I will say, at the time that I started, there were a bunch of changes being made at UCB curriculum wise that I was like not sure about. And, I was teaching there very regularly at that point. And then I wanted to do musical. Well, first of all, I remember Armando being like, oh, you want to teach a class here? And I was told at the time by someone at UCB, you can't do both. And I was like, well, I'm a freelancer. I mean, I had a day job the whole time I was in New York. I was never someone, did not have my own money. I was working my ass off. I was working as an office manager at a web design firm for literally the whole time. I worked at one job the whole time. So this was like a freelance job I was doing.
And like, hey man, don't tell me where I can and can't make my extra $75.
But also I'm like, I'm a W-9 employee. I actually legally can teach there if I want to. Yeah. But there was a sense at the time of, I was told directly, like, you can't do both. And Armando was just like offering me more money, and it was the curriculum could belong to me, and you could start a musical improv program here. And that was what I really wanted to do. Frank Spitznagel, who is absolute genius. He just passed away in August. Sorry. There's no one who knew him who would not tell you he was a genius. He was a piano player. He was more than a piano player. He's like the face of musical improv in New York, probably, especially at the Magnet. And I remember just saying to him, like, I want to teach other people how to do this. I'm having so much fun. And he was like, let's do it. And Armando was like, you can teach however you want, whatever you want. And to be really like blunt, he was just going to pay more money.
Right.
And so
this is another side by side. It becomes another yay boo.
It is. It's another like, boo yay. Yeah. It's exactly right. And so it did not, and I guess things were repaired enough that it wasn't like you're going to get kicked off of Mother if you go teach over there. But I was told you can't teach both places. And so I did switch over and start teaching at the Magnet at that point. And that's where I actually created my first musical improv program was at the Magnet.
I love it.
Yeah.
What did you draw on to in order to like make your curriculum, or was it kind of were you kind of
we were
flying by the seat
really
at
making
first?
it up a little bit at first.
Yeah.
There is one book that Michael Pollack wrote about musical improv, or at least at the time there was just one, and it had a bunch of stuff in it that I sort of knew already, and I was like, oh, this is a fun, this helps me figure out how to talk about it. But it was, at that time, like Baby Wants Candy was around, and there were sometimes day workshops that they would do, and so it wasn't like crazy to sort of jump to have done some musical stuff, but to really codify it into a curriculum. And it's so funny because I don't remember a lot of it, but after Frank passed, I was talking to O'Donnell, and he was like, do you not remember when it was you and me and Armando and Frank, and we were at this barbecue place, and I remember Hill Country Barbecue. They had like paper on the table, and you would like your barbecue would come on like a slab, and he's like,
real
you had a
Flintstone
pen
style.
He's like, I remember. His memory is nuts. He's like, you had a pen and you were writing down all these things, and you and Frank were like, yeah, and that and that and that, and Armando was like, whatever you want.
Curriculum covered in barbecue sauce.
Like
it looks
a beautiful
like serial
mind,
killer notes.
like and I don't remember it that way, of course. Like that's very O'Donnell to storyify the thing.
You had 96 French fries, and you arranged them in the shape of letters that spelled out the title of the class.
That's how I was. Yeah. That's so me. But there's so many of my memories are like that, where someone else like will go, well, do you like Frank was like, do you remember when we came up with the trio fugue? And I was like, we came up with that? And he's like, yeah, you were in class and you were like, do this. And I was like, no, I just know it's a thing that I've been doing for a long time. I just assumed that I read about it, or I thought. And he's like, no, in class. So like it was, the thing about that whole time is that people it's like this, it really is history. If you care about this stuff, it's history. But for all of us, it was just,
you were just getting barbecue.
Just like hanging out with my friends.
When you teach a musical improv course, give me like what might be like the chapter headings.
I will. Yeah.
Like what are the categories you teach?
1, 2, and 3. The way that I have like separated them out. The first one is how to sing. Okay. How to speak the language of a song, right? And even if you are a musician and you already know how to write a song, it's like what is a song? A verse, a chorus? How do you set a simple chorus? What's a bridge? Like it's how to sing a song, right?
And do you get into actual technical singing stuff in that? Like how to like breathe from your diaphragm?
Somewhat. We do warm-ups, and I do on the first day I talk about like why we do these warm-ups and sort of the best way to do them. I'm not a vocal coach, and so that is not my strong suit. Some of the piano players and music directors do more of that when they're the one playing for you. But I do have some sense of like, I want everyone to stand up straighter. Like when I can feel that they're not fully doing it, there's some of that, but I'm not and have never been a vocal coach. I'm also not trained at all. And so
you're a great singer. It doesn't show.
That is very nice of you.
That surprises me.
I have come to terms with the fact that people think I'm a good singer.
I've come to terms with it.
Mean,
I suppose.
I know that I am not compared to people who are really good singers. Like I know that, but I also don't care.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they will mind me saying this. 2 of the funniest people that I have ever done musical improv with are Joe O'Brien and Brian Finkelstein. And they are not singers, right? And I think they will not be mad. Hopefully someone doesn't call them and go, did you hear that Tara said? I don't think they would be mad, but they are 2 of the best, funniest, most fun people that I ever performed musical improv with and improv with, right? So I always say this to people, and I really mean it. If you're on the fence, it is not about being able to sing, it's about being willing to sing. And everyone can make singing. Everyone can make song.
Everyone can make singing. Come to a 4-week course called Everyone Can Make Singing.
I just feel like that's the kind of content you charge extra for on your Patreon.
That nose going on the main, baby. That's main only.
But you know what I mean? But there are lots of students who come who don't sing.
Go to any TGI Fridays on any weekend, and you're hearing a whole restaurant dive into joining into Happy Birthday as a cake comes out. You know,
on American Idol. Anyone can sing.
Anyone make singing do.
There is no make, only sing.
But and carrying a tune is something that can be practiced and honed, and then beyond that, the skills can be vocally coached.
I never learned how to sing, and I was doing musical improv from the very beginning, right at Chicago City Limits, and I could hear when the notes were wrong. I just couldn't do anything about it. So the more you sing, the better you get at singing, because I'm now this many years into it, and people will say, well, you're a very good singer, and I'm like, great. I'm so glad you think that.
I have the inverse of that. I grew up playing like piano and guitar, and then was like, the annoying college kid with like my guitar and whatever, writing songs.
Probably very sexy, very hot.
Very sexy, very funny in bed. But for years, I sang all the time in my bedroom with my guitar.
Yeah.
And recently I've kind of fallen off with like playing and practicing, and it just isn't like a huge part of my life anymore. And I've noticed that even when I try to like sing along with the radio, like I used to be able to harmonize with everything at the drop of a hat. It's a lot harder for me now to find the right notes because I'm not doing it regularly. And even melodies now, I'm like not landing on it right away, and I'm like, God, I wonder if there's something to that I was like, it was a frequency of use, and it's fading away.
I believe it. And I've seen students who start in level 1 and they don't sing at all, and years later they're now like performing and singing regularly, and you just get better and better. Like I believe that is true. I mean, that's like any instrument.
So chapter titles. First is
the first one is how to sing.
How to sing.
And then the second one is I call what to sing. So this is now that you know how do you make your songs funny? What are the most common games in songs, types of songs, and how do you actually like now play the game of your scene in your song so that your songs are now the funny song. Now that you know how to do it, because so many songs when you're first learning are like a song about friendship.
Right.
A song about love, you know, because it's like singing about something super accessible in order to just solidify how to do it. And then for me, the next level is why do we sing, which is narrative musical improv. So how do you plug those kinds of songs into a narrative and use them to tell a story? Because narrative musical improv isn't about plot. It's not about writing. It's not about directing. It's about going, here is what drives my character. And I just stay driven that way throughout the show and have it resolve. So
it's basically just opposing character games, or just like a whole cauldron of different character games thrown in together,
and tropes and types, and so being familiar with I wouldn't even say musicals, but stories is very helpful when you're doing a narrative. So you can go, oh, we're kind of doing Grease right now. Let's map a lot of a lot of mapping. You can if you can map a plot, then you can play it without having to think about it. Things like that. So
it reminds me of, did you ever read Save the Cat? Screenwriting book
in college, a long time ago.
In college,
do you guys remember how I went to college? You're welcome. It was an all women's college.
Yeah, it was a
BICO with Haverford.
But in Save the Cat, his big advice is like, if you're writing a horror movie, watch a bunch of horror movies and
of
like
course.
notice. But he's like, get really specific. Is it a we're trapped in the house movie?
Yes.
Is it a monster that's uncontrolled movie? So get as specific as you can about the genre, and then watch like 5 movies in that genre, and you can see the story beats repeat. And this is similar.
That sounds
it's like,
really smart.
You know,
listen, do you ask like what's your best advice for? I mean, you guys, fuck. You cannot beat yourself. Improv is over when it's over. As it's happening, it's over.
There it is. It already was.
If you lay in bed at night or in your car, or you walk out of the show going, "Oh, I shoulda."
Right.
Why didn't I? You didn't already.
Right.
And that is the thing. If I could like shake that truth, and I'm not saying you're not coachable, you can't learn, there aren't things. One of the things about Chicago City Limits that I'm going to say, I will say this. We got notes. We had to meet in the green room and get notes after every show.
That's great.
I was doing 6 shows a week.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, Suzi, because it wasn't like, here's a thing you've done for 3 of the shows
gotcha.
this week. It was like, here's what you did that you and here's what you could have done. And that kind of note is not helpful because that's not what improv is, right?
I was assuming the notes were like what we were getting at Boom, which was often like, hey, for this intro, make sure you're standing in the light down, like technical stuff.
They were like improv notes about what you did in the moment, and notes are valuable when you have someone regularly seeing you who can go, you're moving your feet a lot, or even your improv notes, right? You're saying no in this situation. And it's not like people's improv can't be tweaked and changed, but if you have every show 6 shows a week,
right? I have a funny memory, speaking of getting notes, at Boom, like my first week there, or my first 2 weeks, the director was giving notes on the show, and they were like, most of them were technical notes. Like, so have the microphone preset so that you can do this for hosting, blah, blah, blah.
That makes
sense. And then he started giving Colton notes on a scene, and he was like, I feel like they had everything on the rails with the Care Bears scene, and then when you made it like Cloud City, like Star Wars, then it kind of derailed it a little bit. He's like, got it, Pep. The next time we're doing a scene that's the Care Bears improvising a reggae song about, cheese, then I won't enter as Lando Calrissian.
Exactly right.
And it made me laugh so hard, and I was like, wow, great point. Yeah.
But that's the point, right? You're not yes, that's the point. By the way, Colton, I should have mentioned him with all the Chicago City Limits people.
Course.
And I talk about Colton in class a lot because we used to start every show with an improvised blues. Improvised blues is 3 rhyming couplets that ends in a joke on the suggestion. And there are 5 people in the cast, and all 5 people do it. So the person who gets the suggestion goes, bananas, that gives us a case of the blues, right? And Frank goes, da-na-na-na-na-na. And the first person runs out, and they show the audience how to do it. So what's expected of them is nothing. But by the 5th person,
you got to be
4 of
rhyming
these.
with Chiquita.
And you've been backstage thinking of a joke.
Right.
Thinking of a joke. And listen to me, if you can do this kind of improv, you can fucking do anything. So like a short form joke improv class is not outside of the realm of like what might be valuable for a lot of comedians. I know you know that. But so and Victor Varnado used to do this thing because we would be backstage and we would go, what's your thing? And we would tell people, right? It's banana. Mine's going to be split. I'm going to do
you
appeal.
got to cheat that way.
Well, you could say, here's what my last word's going to be.
Gotcha.
So that we aren't all building the same joke backstage, right? And Victor would go, what's your thing? And then he'd go, thanks, and push you and run on stage and sing your thing.
No.
Oh man, we fucked with each other. We would give each other like, if you work this word into the show tonight, I'll give you $10 after whatever, right? So by the time you get to the last person, it's got to be really good. So Colton, and Colton, he is the fucking best. He is just charisma in a skin suit. I don't even know. And he would go banana. He would go banana, 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 banana. And he would say nothing but the word banana. It didn't matter if he was first, second. He didn't do it every time, but he just could go out and just be so charismatic and so confident. And the audience would be crying watching him because he personified fun and humor, and he never was like, I'm gonna be in my just what you're saying, right? Oh yeah, the next time I'm doing a Care Bear scene with a reggae beat, he just personified the fun of the moment, right? Without having to be like, I've got to write the most complicated wordplay about a banana.
Yep. It's it's so free. It
can be free. It's supposed to be fun, you guys. You're supposed to be having fun. If you're dropping $5.50 and you're showing up and you're not feeling fun about it at the end.
Well, maybe that's contributing to some of the serious feeling too. Yes. Like that's a serious wad of cash.
It is a wad of cash.
So it imbues it with stakes even before it really started, rather than just like, getting together in a sandbox and doing character voices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it should feel like getting together in a sandbox, right?
It should. That's what it basically is.
How do we do that for all the people?
How do we make free classes for everyone? everybody.
Or just have them go that my money's worth the fun and not the seriousness of it.
I was talking to some people after ASCAT the other night who were like, they're 401 students, and they were like, when do you get to the point where you stop like beating yourself up after shows? And I was like, oh, that's such a good question. I was like, you know, as you progress through your improv life, that's like a natural thing that happens, especially when you have like a less amount of shows, or it's like you have one class show and it feels like it's so weighted on that or whatever. But I was like, it's just reps. As you continue, like the quality of your scenes will feel better. Your ideas will come faster. You will feel more playful and free. And those like negative voices will lessen and whatever. But I was like, if those come up now, like for you, you can swat them away. And the analogy I was using is like, you know, it happens in like every category of life. Like you might have some days where you're like more clumsy than others, where you like drop your fork or whatever, or you trip on the sidewalk out of nowhere.
Right.
Do you spend the whole week then going, I suck at walking. I don't deserve to walk. Why did I walk like that? What is wrong with me? It's like we don't do it in other categories. So if you can kind of map that over and be like, okay.
That's right. If you said something truly offensive or truly heinous and you hurt somebody, then yes, you're allowed to be like ruminating on that and figuring out how do I repair that.
Yeah.
But I actually tell my students, your job after a show is to tell everyone who you're talking to about the show the 3 things you love the most about it.
Oh, that's great.
And I've had students before where I'm like, I literally give them the assignment after every rehearsal and every show you do, I want an email with the 3 things that were the funniest. I want to know the 3 things you did that were the best things. And I want to know the 3 funniest things about the show overall.
Tara, that's so lovely.
Because that should be where your head is. Your head should be what worked. What was great?
Yeah.
Because if you enter, I mean, listen, fuck it, all of life. And I'm not saying we can live all of life that way, but that if you can have improv, the spirit of improv be, what do I love about this? Who do I love? What works about what they do? Rather than, what am I doing wrong? What could I have done differently? You are always going to enter the room as that person. You're going to be more fun. That is one of the ways you get rid of that beating yourself up is I always say that's not your fucking job. That's my job as your coach, is to help you through those moments. Your job is to love what you're doing and to have fun doing it and celebrate that after it's over.
Right.
I'll tell you what you could have done differently.
I'll tell you why you suck.
I'll tell you what's fucking wrong with you, you fucking dickhole.
Sit down.
Sit down and sing a chorus, you piece of garbage. But you know what I mean? Like, that's a huge part of it to me.
Angela Giarratana sat in that very chair and talked about you, saying like, who told you you weren't funny?
I don't remember taking her in a bathroom to do it, but I remember having that feeling about her a lot because she's so fucking funny.
So funny.
And just, you know, people just get in their own way. Yeah. And so at a certain point, I mean, I've had students where I just have said to them, I can't know it more than you do. I can't keep telling it to you. Also, for nothing, it's not fair to the rest of the class for you to be so funny and then talk that way about yourself after. Because listen, I'll tell you what. I have been a curvy girl my whole life, and I have had skinny friends my whole life, or very, you know, whatever. And I had a best friend growing up who would be like, oh, I'm so fat. And all I could think was, what does she think I look like if that's how she thinks about herself, right? What does that mean about me? And I truly have been curvy and fucking confident and happy and whatever,
but
right?
Here you are being like, I'm beautiful, I don't give a shit. But someone next to you is infecting you with this idea that something's wrong.
What must she think of me? And so if people are consistently saying you're so good at this and you're going, no, I'm not, that's why I'm really trying to embrace that people think I'm a good singer, because I'm like, okay, maybe I have become a good singer, and I'm not going to spend my time all the time comparing myself to Eliza or Ashley, who are like looking incredible, right? I know I'm not that, but I do, you know what I mean? So it's like that. It's like if you talk that way. Also, I just told a student this week, if you're talking that way, I'm hearing it. You don't want me to think of you that way, right?
Right.
You don't want the people in the room to think of you that way. So it's
don't poison the well.
Don't poison the well. Let me say something nice about you and believe that nice thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever read the 4 Agreements, you probably read it in kindergarten.
Oh, you know what? It was part of my BICO kindergarten experience.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main agreements is be impeccable with your words. So it's like, don't speak badly about other people or yourself. Just like leave it be, you poison the well. I could use some more of that in practice, but it really does make a difference.
Yeah.
Which part of your garden are you going to water? The part that's like, that points out what funny things you did in the show and what you did well, or do you want to water the weeds that,
you know how much I love a metaphor like that?
I love
A metaphor like that.
Do you want me to say it again slower?
No, but I definitely want you to make people pay extra for it on the Patreon. Like,
sure.
Don't let them hear that
Please.
for free, Suzi.
Supercast. Yesalso.supercast.com. Let's go back to some of these tentpole ideas. For part 2 of this episode, go to yesalso.supercast.com. If you like this podcast and you want double the content, head over to yesalso.supercast.com and subscribe. You can also help us out for free by subscribing to us on YouTube and talking us up to your improv communities. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer in one of our Q&A episodes, or a topic that you think would make a great bonus episode, put it in a 5-star review. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A very special thanks to our producer, Ryan Rosenberg, audio and video editor, Brian Kessler, and Britt Faye, who does our marketing. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Suzi. That's not how podcasts work. They won't even see us. They will listen to us, so it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.